Hello and welcome. I'm Yuki. I want to say something at the start because this is a subject where a great deal of nonsense gets said. Nothing here will make your hair grow. I'm not a doctor and I have no idea what would help you. And if your hair is thinning or falling out in a way that worries you, that's a question for someone qualified rather than for me. What I want to talk about is much smaller. It's what my grandmother had on her dressing table and how little of it there was, because most of us have quietly accepted that hair is a thing you buy solutions for. Something isn't right, so there's a bottle. It doesn't work, so there's a different bottle. And after 20 years of that, you have a cupboard full and no clearer idea than when you started. So instead of asking what you should be putting on your hair, I'd like to ask you something else today. How many of the things in your bathroom will still be there in 10 years? Because on that dressing table, the answer was nearly all of them. Let me show you. Let's begin. I want to start with a small glass bottle that has looked the same for about 100 years. It's oil, pressed from the seeds of the camellia, tsubaki oil. The camellia is a shrub with a red flower that grows all over southern Japan, and the seeds have been pressed for their oil for centuries. The bottle is small, and the oil is thin and almost odorless. I'd like you to hold on to that bottle because everything else comes back to it. You use a few drops. A bottle lasts most of a year. My grandmother sat on the same corner of the same table for as long as I can remember, and I could not tell you when she bought it because I never once saw her buy one. There was one other thing on that table, and it was not a product at all. A comb cut from boxwood. Suge, pale yellow wood, cut and shaped and polished, and the teeth are cut by hand. A good one is expensive, and a good one lasts decades. And here is the part that surprised me when I finally understood it. You don't only oil your hair, you oil the comb. The comb is soaked in camellia oil when it's made, and it's re-oiled through its life, so a tiny amount transfers every time you use it. The comb is doing the work. It isn't a tool for applying a product. The tool and the product are the same object, and you own it for 30 years. What people did with those two things was mostly nothing, and that took me a long time to appreciate. You brush. And you wash less than you think. Not never. Nobody here is unwashed, but the rhythm my grandmother kept, and that a lot of older women still keep, is a proper wash less often, with a great deal of brushing in between. Now, I'm not going to tell you that's better for you, because I don't know, and neither does anyone shouting about it online. What I will say is what it does to your cupboard. If brushing is doing most of the work, you need one comb. If washing is doing most of the work, you need shampoo, then conditioner, then something to repair what the shampoo did, then something to protect it from the heat you're about to apply. One of those is a system with a lot of parts, and the other one really isn't. Small pause here. My ebook, The Quiet Reset, is for anyone who wants a calmer daily routine without adding more steps. It's the first link in the description. And speaking of routines, when hair is washed, and when it is washed, the washing itself is done differently from how most of the world does it, which I didn't realize until I lived somewhere else. You sit down to do it. In a Japanese bathroom, you wash outside the tub, sitting on a low plastic stool with a handheld shower. Hair first, then everything else, and then you get into the water clean. I want to be precise about why that matters, and it isn't posture. Sitting down with a shower in your hand means you rinse for a long time because rinsing is comfortable and there's nowhere else to be. Standing under a shower, most people rinse until the suds are gone and stop. My grandmother's view, which she never explained and never changed, was that almost every problem people had with their hair was a rinsing problem. Not enough water, not for long enough, and then something else applied on top to fix what the last thing left behind. The other half of it is that hair was simply put away, up and out of the way most of the day. A twist, a clip, a couple of pins. Not styled, not arranged, secured. My mother's hair was down for perhaps an hour a day, at the beginning and the end. I don't think this is about modesty, whatever people say. Hair that is tied up isn't being dragged through a coat collar or blown against itself in the wind or handled all day. The single most protective thing available is free, takes 4 seconds, and looks like nothing at all. So let me stop and say plainly what I think the real difference is, because it isn't the oil, and it certainly isn't the camellia. Hair care here was never a category of products. It was the maintenance of two objects you already owned. Think about how strange that is compared with what we do now. The unit of hair care, for most of us, is a bottle, something that arrives full, empties, and is replaced by another one. The whole thing is designed around consumption. So, of course, there are more and more of them, and of course, you can never be finished. The unit on my grandmother's table was an object, a comb she had owned longer than she had owned me, a bottle she topped up perhaps once a year. And when the unit is an object rather than a supply, the question changes completely. You stop asking what to buy and start asking how to look after what you've got, which is a much shorter conversation and a much cheaper one. And there's a second half. When you have two things instead of 15, you actually find out what works because you can only change one thing at a time. Most of us have no idea which of our products is doing anything, and we never will because we have never once used only one. The same thinking runs through the drying, and this is the part my mother is still strict about at 79. You do not go to bed with wet hair. Towel first, properly, pressing rather than rubbing, then air, or a dryer held further away than you'd think and moved about, and never on the hottest setting. And you don't sleep on it damp. The reason she gives is that you'll catch cold, which I don't think is true, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But the habit outlasted the reason, and the habit is a good one, because wet hair is soft hair, and soft hair is what gets damaged by being slept on. What strikes me is the direction of it. Nothing there is bought. It's just 5 extra minutes at the end of the day, given to something you already have. And I notice that the things we buy are almost always sold to us as replacements for 5 extra minutes. There's a person in this system too, and it's the piece I miss most. You have one hairdresser for decades, the same small shop, the same woman who has cut your hair since you were 30 and cut your mother's before that. She doesn't need to be told anything. She knows the cowlick. She knows what happened the year you tried a fringe. She knows how it behaves in the rainy season. And I think a great deal of what people go looking for in products is actually that. Somebody who already knows, so you don't have to keep starting over. My mother has been going to the same woman for 31 years, and they discuss almost nothing except the weather. There's one occasion when all of that patience is thrown away at once, and I've never heard it explained properly, including by me. When something ends, a woman cuts her hair. After a relationship finishes, or a long job, or a bad year, she goes in and has a great deal of it taken off, and everybody who sees her understands immediately and says nothing. It's such a common thing here that it's a stock scene in every drama, which usually means an idea is worn out. But I think it survives because it's the only version of a fresh start that is actually visible. You cannot see a decision. You can see 6 inches of hair on the floor. And what's interesting to me, given everything else I've said, is that the same culture that treats hair as a thing you keep for 30 years also has a recognized moment for removing it. The keeping isn't sentimental, it's just the default, and defaults are allowed to be broken on purpose. There's a historical detail here that tells you how seriously this was taken, and it's slightly alarming. For a long time, women slept on a wooden neck rest rather than a pillow. A takamakura, a small lacquered block with a padded roll on top, and your neck rests on it so that your head never touches the bedding. The reason was that an elaborate style took hours and had to last several days, so you protected it at night by not lying on it. I mention this not as advice, please do not do this, but because it makes a point that the bottles never will. The effort went into keeping the thing you already had, not into redoing it. Everything in this story points the same way. And before I go any further, I should deal with the thing that every Japanese grandmother says, because it's nonsense, and I'd rather say so myself. Eat seaweed, and your hair will be black and thick. Wakame, kombu, hijiki. Every child here has been told it. It is repeated on television, in magazines, and by people who ought to know better. There is no good evidence for it at all. It is a folk belief, and a very old one, and I was told it perhaps 400 times growing up. I mention it because I don't want you leaving with the impression that this country is quietly in possession of the answer. It has its own superstitions, sold in its own gift shops, and if I skipped them, I'd be doing exactly what the bottles do, offering you a story that sounds ancient because ancient sells. Now I have to be honest with you, because a video like this can very easily become a fantasy about a simpler country. And modern Japan is not that at all. Walk into any drugstore here, and you will find one of the largest hair care sections on earth. Aisles of it. Japan buys an enormous quantity of shampoo, treatment, mist, and serum per person, and the packaging is beautiful and the marketing is relentless. Young women bleach and perm and straighten as much as anywhere, and the damage that causes is exactly the same damage. The boxwood comb has become an expensive craft object rather than an ordinary one. A good one now costs more than most people will spend on a comb, which is precisely backwards from what it used to be. And camellia oil is sold to tourists in gift boxes. So this isn't a country that resisted any of it. It's a country where, one generation ago, an ordinary woman's entire hair routine sat on a corner of a table and consisted of two objects. That's the part worth looking at. And it has nothing to do with Japan, really. Let me lay it out simply then. The things that make hair complicated are these. The unit is a bottle, so there is always another one. Every problem has a product, including the problems the last product caused. You use so many things at once that you can never tell what any of them does. The washing is hurried, and the rinsing is the part that gets cut. Nobody knows your hair, so every appointment starts from nothing. And it's handled and loose and worked on all day. And the things that make it simple are almost dull. One tool you look after instead of several you use up. A small amount of one oil. Brushing more and washing a little less, and rinsing for far longer than feels necessary. Drying it before you sleep on it. Tying it up when you're not doing anything. And one person who has known it for years. If you take one question with you, take the one from the beginning. How many of the things in your bathroom will still be there in 10 years? If the honest answer is none of them, that isn't a moral failing. It's just what happens when everything you own is a supply rather than an object. But you can change the answer with a single purchase and then not buying anything for a very long time. Which brings me back to that small bottle on the corner of the table, next to a yellow wooden comb with hand-cut teeth. Two things. That was the entire routine of a woman who had extremely good hair into her 80s, and I never heard her discuss it once. You don't need camellia oil, and you certainly don't need my grandmother's comb. Buy one good tool, learn to look after it, and see how much of the cupboard turns out to have been optional. If you like quiet histories that make ordinary things feel worth noticing again, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.